Flow tutorial part 11, binding from external assemblies. In part 10 we have learned about a scenario context. So in this session we are going to learn about what is external binding, configuration for external bindings. So let me start this session. So when we guys are talking about the external binding, take an example of you have two projects, and in a one project you have a step definition and you want to use the step definitions which you have written in the first project, and you want to use, then we need to use an external binding assembly. So let me flip to Visual Studio to understand with an example. Right now we have two projects. One is a Specflow session project, another is external assemblies project. Specflow session project is having a feature file, and this feature file is having two scenarios. One is register event with valid information and a register user. So these scenarios have a different steps, and these steps have a corresponding step definitions. If you go to right click and say go to definition, we can see we have a different step definitions. So these are the step definitions of the step which we have added it here. And if you talk about this external assemblies, this external assembly is having a guest register feature, and this is having a scenario. This scenario is not having a step, so we want to use the steps those are present here in this event registration, or in other words we can say we want to use the step definitions which we have added it here in this Specflow session project. We want to use them here in this external assemblies project. How can we get the step definitions which we have mentioned it here in this project to the external assemblies project? Specflow provides a mechanism where we guys can use the step definition in another project as well. So that mechanism we call it as a external assemblies. For that, what we need to do is right click on this project, say add new items, and go to Specflow, and here we have a Specflow JSON configuration. Here we need to add a Specflow JSON configuration file in this external assemblies project. Whenever you have a step definition in any of the project and you want to access those step definition in another project, then you need to have a Specflow JSON configuration, because we need to add a few settings here in this Specflow JSON configuration. So let's have a Specflow JSON configuration. One important point: whenever you are adding a specflow.json file, you need to provide the name as a specflow.json. Otherwise the settings are not going to take a change. So let's click on add. By default we are getting two objects in this JSON. One is a binding culture and there is a language. So now if you want to access the step definitions, those are present in Specflow session to here in external assemblies. So let's do one thing. Let's try out whether we are able to get the step definitions. Those are present here in this guest feature or not. So let's type this given say user, and we can see we are not getting any step definitions. It means we need to provide some settings. And if you talk about settings or the fields which we need to add it here, we need to add a one field. We call it as a step, and this is of a array list type, and inside this we need to add an object. We need to provide the name as an assembly to provide the name of that particular assembly. So we have added a field, we call it as a step assembly. So this step assemblies is going to have the information related to the different projects, and if you want to access the step definitions, those are present here in this Specflow session. We need to consider, or you can say the Specflow is going to consider this project as an assembly. So it means if we want to access the step definitions, those are present here in this Specflow session, we need to add the name, we need to give the reference of this particular Specflow session here in this JSON file. And we have added a step assemblies, and inside the step assemblies we have added one object, and inside the object we need to provide the assembly. So if you talk about the assembly, we need to provide the name of the project. Here we need to provide the name of the project as a Specflow. Save the values, Control S. We are getting a pop-up window here. We are getting this pop-up window whenever you make any change here in this specflow.json file and you want to have the impact in the output folder, then we need to save the values. So it is going to regenerate the values, as it is saying, do you want to regenerate them now? Yes, we are saying yes. Another important thing we need to do is whenever you are having a specflow.json file, you need to set a one more property, because whenever you are executing your test cases, those execution is going to happen it in a output folder. And if you talk about the output folder, let's go it here, right click, go open folder in File Explorer, go to bin, debug, net 48, and this is the output folder. So this output folder is having a different DLLs, and one is a specflow.json file as well. So this specflow.json file is nothing, this is the file which we have saved it. So whenever you want to have the information or whatever the information which you are saving it at the time of the designing, and you want to have the changes when you are running your test cases, you need to make a change in this specflow.json file properties. Right click and go for properties, have the copy to output directory, and this copy to output directory is having a three options: do not copy, copy always, and a copy if newer. If you select a do not copy and you are running your execution, then whatever the changes which you are making it here in the specflow.json file, those are not going to copy it to the output folder. If you are saying copy always, it means whenever you are running your execution, this changes will be copied to the output folder. And if it is saying copy if newer, it means whenever you have some changes in this specflow.json file, then it is going to copy. Otherwise things will not be copied. So let's have a copy always. So we made all the changes here in this specflow.json to have all the step definition here in this external assemblies. Those are present here in this Specflow session project. So let's go it here in the guest feature, and if we type given, and we can see we are not getting a step definitions here in this project. So let's do one thing. So sometimes it happens, what you need to do is you need to close a solution, say save and restart it. And if we commit here again and say given, and we can see we are getting a step definitions, those we have mentioned it here in this Specflow session project. Okay, so we can also have a few more things, and we can see we have a I provide first name, and if you right click on this, go to definitions, and we have reached it here. So these are the step definitions. Right now we able to get it here in this project as well, which we have mentioned it here in this Specflow sessions. So whenever you want to access the step definitions, those are present in any other project, then you need to add a specflow.json file in the project where you want to access the step definitions, and you need to provide a tag or field, we call it as step assemblies, and inside the assemblies we need to provide the project name. Then whatever the step definitions, those are available in that particular project which we are going to mention it here in this assemblies, then you can access it. Another important point, if you want to access the step definitions from the multiple projects, then what you need to do is you need to have another object with, like we have added it here, you need to provide another object in this particular step assemblies, and here you need to provide the project name. In this way we can access the step definitions from the multiple projects. If you talk about the additional resources, I have already created one course that is on the Udemy, and that course help you to learn a professional automation framework creation with the C#, Specflow, and the Selenium. So that course is going to help us to create an enterprise level automation framework with the different design patterns: builder design pattern, singleton design pattern, a strategy design pattern, and dependency injection design pattern. So this is the one of the most important design pattern where we guys are not creating the object with the help of the new operator. So this dependency injection design pattern helping us to create the object without utilizing a new operator. Another is a IOC design pattern. So these all design patterns helping a automation framework which we have created in this Udemy course, making a more robust and a more reliable as well. So this course help us to build the thought pattern for designing and targeting the framework, and this course also help us to build the capabilities to understand any complex code base. So after completing the course, you will able to create your own professional level automation framework. After completing this course, you will able to create your own professional level automation framework from the scratch, not with this language but with the other languages as well, because a framework development is not dependent on any of the language. So framework code also uploaded with the course. If you want, you can enroll that particular course on the Udemy. Please subscribe this channel to have the notifications of a new automation related sessions.